Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. This is Sorvesteon coming to you with another taming guide for Riders of Icarus. And as you can see, I am in Cavern of the Veil, because in this taming guide, I'm going to show you how you can get an Abyssal Coatra. Now, there's lots of backstory here, but long story short, what we need is a Marumi tier. Now, taming an Abyssal Coatra is very similar to how you tame Rarity from the ruins of Matren. In that dungeon, you needed to get a brilliant crystal which dropped off the various bosses. And with that brilliant crystal, it acted as a mark to help you tame Rarity. Well, the same thing here in Cavern of the Veil with the Abyssal Coatra. We're going to need Marumi tears, and they drop off of the Marumi in this dungeon. Now, specifically, they drop off the Marumi in the cult barracks. All of the Marumi in the cult barracks, which you can see me overlooking here, have a chance of dropping Marumi tears. And Kellyan, which is the final archer boss that you fight just before you fight Radahn's Eye, and who gets revived, and you end up fighting again while you're fighting Radahn's Eye at the same time. She's in Radahn's Shrine, and she also has a chance of dropping Marumi tears. Now, your best chance of getting Marumi tears is probably... See, I've already taken the liberty of clearing the dungeon, or not clearing the dungeon, but at least clearing the cult barracks out. Your best chance of getting Marumi tears is probably off of this guy here, Kellyan, High Priest Kellyan. Now, I've left him up just so I can show you. He is probably the one who you're going to get Marumi tears off of, and he's by far the easier of the two bosses to farm. Because you don't have to come in that far, you just have to clear through this kind of passageway, and then, you can get into the cult barracks, and you can take him down fairly easily. And Kellyan, on the other hand, well, you have to go all the way through the dungeon in order to get to Kellyan, and she is a much, much harder fight. So while she probably does have a better chance of dropping Marumi tears, the investment of time required to farm her is far more significant. At that point, you might as well just be clearing the entire dungeon. And Cavern of the Veil is a long dungeon, so it's quite a time investment to farm this dungeon and clear the whole thing. And that's one of the reasons why it's really not that popular. Now, the Marumi tears themselves, unfortunately, I have a few here, are a very uncommon drop. And I mean, this is nothing like the brilliant crystals you needed to tame Rarity in the ruins of Matren. Those dropped relatively frequently. They were not that hard to get. You could easily accumulate several in your inventory, especially if you were just, soloing it yourself. The Marumi tears are far more uncommon, and they... Well, trust me, you can run this dungeon on Heroic, like on Heroic 3 or Heroic 4, and you can do that several times, and you'll never see a Marumi tear drop. They are a very rare item, and, well, they don't just have a chance to drop off of drop in the Heroic difficulty, they also have a chance of dropping in on the Elite difficulties as well, but trust me, the drop rate for them is really, really low in the Elite dungeons. I mean, it's it's approaching close to zero. At least that's what I found. I mean, I farmed Cavern of the Veil for 2 straight days on Elite and Heroic, just trying to get a sense of what the drop rate for the Marumi tears was or is, and what mobs have probably the best chance of dropping it. And I can tell you, I never saw a single one on the Elite difficulties. Although, I've heard from other people and I've read up on it, and apparently it does drop in an Elite. So that's just what I read. I haven't confirmed that myself. I have seen it drop in Heroic. Cavern of the Veil. But it was on Heroic 3, and I was in a full party. So we had, the drop rate buff that you get from being in a full party. I think it's something like 50% or something like that. So not only did we have, that party buff, but we also were running Cavern of the Veil on, a relatively decent difficulty. And still, like, I only saw it drop once in all the time I've run this dungeon. All the time I've been playing, running this dungeon in Parnas Coast, I've only seen it drop once. So that tells me something. Basically, if you want to farm Marumi tiers yourself, you're going to have to run this dungeon on probably the hardest difficulty, Heroic 5. And this is no easy dungeon to farm for several reasons. One of the things that really compounds, the difficulty of getting Marumi tiers is not just the difficulty of the dungeon, and Cavern of the Veil is a difficult dungeon. I mean, most of the dungeon itself isn't really too hard, but that final boss fight, oh boy, like, if you don't know how to fight those bosses, that fight is extremely difficult. And that's one kind of issue that kind of compounds the problem or makes farming Marumi tiers difficult, is that not a lot of people are interested in running Cavern of the Veil. It's not a very popular dungeon in Parnas Coast. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is that the dungeon itself is relatively long. I mean, it's twice the length of Frostkeep. Not only that, but it doesn't drop, like the top gear. So there's no real gear incentive for people to come in here and, suffer through running this really long, hard dungeon in order to get, this epic gear. Because Cavern of the Veil drops basically like second tier gear. It's Frostkeep where you're going to get the best gear from. So there's no gear incentive to run this dungeon. Perhaps the only incentive would be getting heroic coins to get your crossbow and lance, and also maybe to farm Radahn's tiers and maybe Marumi slabs, and also to farm the Marumi tiers. That's probably the only incentive for running this dungeon. But like I said, because of the time investment required to actually complete it, and the fact that there's no real useful gear that drops from this dungeon, most people tend to spend, what little time they have running Frostkeep. So it's difficult to get groups. And because people don't run this dungeon very often, a lot of people are not very well practiced and knowledgeable about the final boss fight. And it is a lot different. In Frostkeep, Heroic Frostkeep, like fighting Rondo, he's difficult. You have to fight him twice. He's got some very mean skills, but he is a lot easier to manage. There's a lot less things going on because you only really have to deal with one boss. Yes, he does summon adds, and they can be, they can hurt quite a bit, but they're fairly easily dispatched. So your attention is really only focused on one boss and what he's doing. In Cavern of the Veil, as you probably know, you have to fight both you have to fight Ankelion first. Then Radahn's eye wakes up and then revives Ankelion, and you have to fight Ankelion again from full health plus Radahn's eye at the same time. And you can't just escape from Radahn's eye. It basically, it can hit you basically from anywhere on the platform you stand. So you basically have to fight two bosses at the same time. Ankelion summons adds, and Radahn's eye also summons adds. So there is just a lot going on, and they both have very nasty skills. So there is a lot going on. This is a difficult fight. One that a lot of people are not too enthusiastic about. And so the point is, not a lot of people farm this dungeon because, getting to the very end and then, you know, clearing the final bosses is a real pain. And on Heroic 5, it's hard. I mean, you need good gear, you need to know the boss fight, and yeah, and not only that, but you need to clear the entire dungeon just to get there, so it's a huge time investment. And, you know, having to kill Ankelion twice, plus having to kill Radahn's Eye, that's like doing 3 bosses at the end. I mean, that final boss fight probably takes up at least maybe just a quarter of the time you're going to be in the dungeon for. So it's just, yeah, it's a big pain in the ass, and so this dungeon is not really that popular. And so that makes, you know, farming the Marumi tiers more difficult because it's going to be a lot harder to get groups to come in here to run this dungeon. And in order to get the Marumi tiers, or at least have a decent chance of getting them to drop, you basically need to be running this dungeon on the hardest difficulty. You know, to have any sort of decent drop rate for this very uncommon mark that you need to tame the Abyssal Coatra. Now, you know, I've got 3 here. I did not farm these 3. Or rather, I should say, I farmed this dungeon, but I didn't get any Marumi tiers. I wasn't able to acquire any Marumi tiers through farming it. I basically had to go and buy all these. And that is basically kind of your last resort, is to go to the auction house. And if we check out how much a Marumi tier is going for, yeah, let's go to the lowest price. They are not cheap. I mean, the price here definitely reflects, you know, how uncommon of a drop this this particular mark is. And you can see it's, yeah, the cheapest one on here is 37 gold, and they average more around 40 gold, so it's fairly expensive. Anyways, I have 3. I'm gonna go and buy one more. So yeah, cool, awesome. Now, so that's one way that you can get the Marumi tiers. I think you can also get it through here. Where is my dungeon achievements? So these elite Parnafamiliar mark boxes, you can get the Marumi tiers through completing the elite achievements for your dungeons as well, or at least you have a chance to. So that's another way you can obtain it. And you know, if there's any in-game events where there's some, you know, elite Parna mark boxes, then you can also obtain it that way. But if you're gonna farm it, my suggestion is really not to worry about Ankelion. All the Marumi in the Radahn Shrine they have no chance of dropping Marumi tiers whatsoever. It's just the cult barracks. So really, I would just come in here on Elite 5 or Heroic 1 or Heroic 2 if your gear is good enough to do Heroic 2. Or even Heroic 3, I don't know, you'd have to probably have Uber gear to solo that on your own. Come in here and then just come into the cult barracks and clear out all the Marumi and, you know, take down this guy here, Killian the High Priest. And he's probably your best bet, you know, he's not too difficult to take down. He's only got one really nasty skill, and as long as you got a significant amount of physical defense, or you can kite him, then you can take him down on your own, and he's probably your best bet for farming it. And then basically just clear the cult barracks, go out, and you can reset the dungeon, or you can go run a different difficulty. Like you could run Elite 5, then you could come in and do the Heroic, and then you could go out, maybe wait a little while, come back in, do the Elite 5 again, and then so on and so on. That's probably your best chance for farming it. Anyways, so now that I've explained how you can get Marumi tiers and kind of, you know, the circumstances surrounding how they drop, let's go and let's tame an Abyssal Coatra. So as you can see here, I am running this on Heroic 1 because the Abyssal Coatra only spawns on the Heroic difficulties of Cavern of the Veil. And you can find the Abyssal Coatra next to Killian's kind of bubble sphere thing. And it's just over here. See? There's the Abyssal Coatra. And probably a better, here, let me summon a different, there we go, get some more run speed going. Probably a better way, or a better position, I should say, would be to kind of come over to this other side, and then, yeah, see, you can see the Abyssal Coatras over there. Now, I've taken the liberty of really just clearing out all the Aguls here. Like, they're all over in the water and stuff like that. I'm not worrying about the Lahavs, because the Lahavs are not really that big of an issue. They're passive, and they won't aggro. However, when you're taming the Abyssal Coatra, it's going to run around, and you definitely don't want to, you know, have or aggro a whole bunch of Aggle warriors, especially if you're in here by yourself, like I am. That would not be cool. It would definitely, it might ruin your fun, because they might kill you while you're trying to tame the Abyssal Coatra. Now, I should probably mention there is only one Abyssal Coatra that I know of that spawns in the Cult Barracks, and it always spawns in this location here. So if I open my map, you can see here, the point of my mouse, it's right here. Right here, just ahead of, well, yeah, right there. Okay. Now, for gear, to come in and do this by yourself, let's change my title. You can see here that I have a pretty high defense. I mean, I'm getting this from my pet, and I have a pretty high DPS as well. So I don't really struggle on Heroic 1. Heroic 2, I begin to struggle on. Heroic 3, no way. I can't solo this on Heroic 3. I mean, with these kinds of stats, I have, you know, a good amount of health. You know, my gear is all plus 11, plus 12 in some cases. My sword is plus 16. You know, my shield is plus 11. You know, I've got the extra cat for the cast time and the health bonus. So I'm fairly decently geared. If you're not, or you're a squishier class, you might need some friends to kind of come in here and help you clear out all the Aguls and the Marumi, so that you can actually like get to the Abyssal Coatra. The Abyssal Coatra itself is no easy mob either. I mean, it's basically like a little mini boss. Now, in order for me to tame this, I do want to get rid of this Agul warrior that's standing right next to him without aggroing the Abyssal Coatra. So I think maybe, yeah, they're starting to walk apart. So I'm going to pull that Agul warrior, and I'm going to get rid of this Agul warrior. Perfect. Now that I've gotten rid of the Agul warrior, I don't really have to worry about too much. I've got the Abyssal Coatra pretty much all to myself, and I can just kind of come out here. Now, oh, see, he's already aggroed. Now, if you look at the bottom of my screen, you can see that the taming conditions are not met. Now, the reason for that is because the Abyssal Coatra's health is too high. Now, I mean, it has a lot more defense than that Agul warrior had. It's like this guy takes a beating. So before I can really, you know, start taming him, I really need to get his health down. So not only will you have to come in here and clear out all the mobs, but you're gonna have to, you know, come in here and start whacking on this Abyssal Coatra, and you're gonna have to have enough physical defense to, or, you know, speed to kite this thing so that you can get its health down. Yeah, I'm gonna use a potion so that it doesn't drop my health too far. Alright. So, now my taming conditions are met. So I am going to stop hitting on it, and I'm just gonna let it hit on me. Now, I do have taming accessories that I got from the, what was it, the Pathfinder NPC, and I am going to use them because, you know, well, I want to reduce any chances I have of failing. So I'm just going to get into a taming position here, and jump on. Not too complicated. Fairly simple. Wow, that's a lot of red to start with. Wow. Let's hope that we get a lot more green. Because, well, yeah, failing would suck. Those Marumi tears are expensive. Doing alright so far. Are we going to get more red or are we going to get more green? Awesome. Successfully tamed the Abyssal Coatra on the first try, and you can see it was really handy that I cleared out this entire area of Aguls first, because I did run around quite a bit, or, well, the Abyssal Coatra ran around with me on it quite a bit while I was trying to tame it. So obviously if you're, you know, on Heroic 1, if you just leave all the Aguls up, then you could definitely get a few on you and they hurt, especially if you're not a tank or you're not a really good tank. Like, even if you're just if you're like an average geared tank or an under geared tank, yeah, the stuff in here will hurt quite a bit. Okay, so just a few more comments about the Abyssal Coatra and the dungeon Cavern of the Veil. As far as I know, only a single Abyssal Coatra spawns on the heroic difficulties. So if you need to grab more than one, then you're going to have to run the dungeon multiple times. Now, I mean, it's important because, you know, you need 4 Abyssal Coatras in order to craft the Koresh mark, which I'm going to be doing a video on soon. So, you know, that's the reason why I had so many Marumi tears, was because I'm actually going to be getting 4 Abyssal Coatras. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why this mount is kind of so important, unless you're getting the Koresh mark some other way. But yeah, for crafting the recipe, you definitely need a lot of Abyssal Coatras, and only one spawns on the heroic difficulty of the dungeon. So you'd have to do 4 separate runs in order to get 4 Abyssal Coatras. Now, for skills and stats, the Abyssal Coatra is not too bad. It gets some decent stats. Skills, it gets the Bitter Cold resistance, which is great for Parna's Coast. Being that it's a Parna's Coast Elite, that makes sense. It gets Abyssal Aura, so a magic attack increase and a mana increase. Good for a caster. And it gets an attack, diving, strike, and that afflicts stun for 2 seconds. So, not too bad. Let's see what happens if we were to seal it up. So, I'm not going to actually seal it. The Abyssal Coatra will give you magic defense and physical critical damage. Interesting combination. That might be useful for an assassin or perhaps a tank, you know, over the magic defense. But yeah, personally I find it a little bit of a strange kind of combination. And that is how you tame an Abyssal Coatra in Riders of Icarus. This has been Sorvesteon. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to my channel for more taming guides. Until next time, fellow riders, take care and have fun.